بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. So we are going to continue with our study of the work Bidayatul Hidayah for Imam Al-Ghazali, and we reached up to the section where Imam Al-Ghazali talks about what we should do from sunrise until noontime. And it is important that we pay attention to this section because it's a lot of benefit in it. So he tells us that we start our morning with after the sunrise, two prayers, Salatul Ishraq and Salatul Duha. And after that, there is no prayers that came from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam beyond that. So Imam Al-Ghazali gives us things that we should engage in. And yesterday we started by the first thing that Imam Al-Ghazali mentioned was talab al-ilm, seeking knowledge. And I remind you of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he said, talab al-ilmi faridatun ala kulli Muslim. Right? Seeking knowledge is an obligation on every Muslim. So inshallah, quickly we'll read over this section again and then we will continue inshallah. Now,
the great Imam Al-Ghazali says in his book The Beginning of Guidance, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. 1. Seeking useful knowledge. The first way and the best is to spend your time seeking beneficial knowledge in religion, not matters of secondary importance to which many people devote themselves and call knowledge.
Now, here we talked about it some yesterday, but when you have additional time, you should seek knowledge, and it should be spent in benefiting people by way of your knowledge. If you are a scholar, so you would spend your time, or a teacher, spend your time in fatwa or in tadris or tasnif or mutala'at lil-kutub. So the person is going to spend their time giving fatwa because people need their religious matters answered, or teaching, or writing books, or reading beneficial books. And it is beneficial if one would spend that time before the time of dhuhr and between the time of fajr and dhuhr in teaching. And we're going to talk about, inshallah, in our upcoming classes, how some of the ulama, they spent their time in this matter, and give some examples of that. So after you do your obligations and those prayers that are recommended and highly encouraged by the Prophet ﷺ, the best thing you can do then is to spend your time in spreading beneficial knowledge. That it is mentioned that some of the scholars, they said, teaching or distributing knowledge among the people, spreading knowledge among the people, is better than distributing wealth among them. And you should have this in your mind, that teaching knowledge and spreading the knowledge is better than giving money to people. And if you had the ability to distribute $100 bills to people, how would you feel? Like just everyone comes up and you can just give them 100 to a lot. You would feel good about yourself. Spreading knowledge among them is better than that. So if you can get the opportunity to teach someone just one case, it should be. exceedingly happy. One mas'ala, one ruling, that is something that is going to be a benefit for someone. Because that one case could be a way of opening for them the door to Al-Jannah. You should be happy about that. And you should consider the best thing you could do. Right? The best thing you could do. And why? Because in teaching and spreading the knowledge, there is a benefit for the creation. And you're guiding them to the path of the Akhirah. And you know, like I said, one case, a person could learn one case and it will correct his deeds for the rest of his life. You know? And you should, as a student, spend your time in acquiring beneficial knowledge. It's called Al-Ilm Al-Nafi'. And you do that by sitting in the presence of your teachers and acquiring that knowledge from them. And this is better than sitting down and doing dhikr or making awrad. It is related in the narration in the hadith from Abu Dhar that he said, sitting in the session of knowledge and remembering Allah Ta'ala is better than praying 1,000 rak'ah of the optional prayers. Or witnessing or attending 1,000 janazas or visiting 1,000 sick people. It is better to sit in those sessions of knowledge and acquire. Right? And if you go and learn one bab of knowledge, one section of knowledge is better than praying 1,000 rak'ah. Better than praying 1,000 rak'ah. Naam, go ahead.
Useful knowledge is only that which increases your fear of Allah Most High, increases your insight into your own defects, and increases your knowledge of how to worship Allah Almighty Most Majestic. It reduces your yearning for this world, increases your yearning for the hereafter, and opens your eyes to the things that spoil your worship so you may guard against them.
And all of this will help you on your path to the Akhirah. Right? So this, at the end of the day, this beneficial knowledge, which is going to increase your fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's going to allow you to see your own inward faults and shortcomings. It's going to increase in how you know how to worship your Lord. And this is the purpose you were created for. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us for worship. So we need to know how to perfect that. Right? And it's going to lessen your desire for the dunya and increase your desire for the akhirah. All of this will help you on your path to the hereafter. And you should always seek your knowledge for what? To help you on your suluk, to help you on your way of traveling, your wayfaring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should always consider that your knowledge leads to that. Now,
it lays bare to you the scheming of Satan, his deceit, and his misleading of the evil scholars, until he succeeds in exposing them to the aversion and wrath of Allah Almighty, Most Majestic, through their use of religion for worldly gain, their employment of knowledge to acquire wealth from the powers that be, their consumption of the wealth of endowment and of the orphans and the poor, and they're directing all their energies throughout the day to attaining prestige and a place in the hearts of people.
And we mentioned this yesterday. So as Imam Al-Ghazali is talking about what happens when people are deluded with their knowledge and shaitan begins to trick them, and he mentioned the scholars, the evil scholars, meaning those who their desire from seeking knowledge is to get the dunya. And the reality is that the deen should be used, the dunya should be used to support the religion, not the religion used to support the deen. So that everything we do in this world, that we work hard to serve the deen. So we want the dunya for deen, not the deen for dunya. Right? We want the dunya so that we can serve the deen. In other words, you want the dunya in your hand, not in your heart. And you should consider that everything you earn is for the service of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. After you take care of the necessities of your family, the rest of your money should go to da'wah. You should train yourself like that. Many people, they have what they need, extra, and extra, and extra, and then maybe we go to the da'wah. And this is backwards. Rather, it should be we have what we need, and the rest goes to da'wah. We are in serious times. We're in a time where we need men and women who are serious about Islam. Not just forms. No, what are you really sacrificing for this deen? So your work, your education, you should have in front of you, all this is to serve the deen. Right? And it's a necessity that we feel like that. I was talking to one of our scholars yesterday, and I said, you know, we have a lot of work to do. And the responsibility of that is mostly on the shoulders of the learned. But the learned must instill in their students the necessity of working for the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The student should not just think that there is no responsibility with learning. There is a responsibility. You must work. You learning, you got to do something with the knowledge. It cannot just be, I sat and I was in Al-Maqasid, alhamdulillah, I took some classes, I learned this, okay, now what? No, you got to work. You got to work. And that's why we talk about these Al-Maqasid al-Thalatha. We talk about them. Al-Ilm, wa-Suluk, wa-Da'wah. That means work. Da'wah is the service, is work. And the Suluk is to train you to be in the habit of working. To work on yourself so that you would get yourself to not be lazy when it comes to calling to Allah. And this, if we all get this concept, that our dunya is for the deen, and we make our energy push towards that, this work of Imam Al-Ghazali will be beneficial for us. Because he's telling us it, right? What is happening with those evil scholars? That they're, he said that himmatuhum wa azmuhum, yani azmuhum, طول نهارهم إلى طالب الجاه والمنزلة. It's always seeking status. No, that's not what it should be. Your desire, your thoughts, your energy, all of your resolve should be to Allah and to call into Allah. Naam, go ahead.
This forces them into a state of ostentation, disputation, rivalry, and boastfulness.
In other words, when you get trapped by shaitan and your deen becomes for dunya, all of the evil traits that come for that go into the heart. And that's what Imam Al-Ghazali, when he talked about Al-Muhlikat, those ruinous matters in his Yahya, you'll notice that Imam Al-Ghazali is not just concentrating on outward things, but inward states as well. Because what you do outward is going to be reflected inward. What you do inward is going to be reflected outward. It goes both ways. So if one is seeking the dunya, all the evil traits inside are going to be in there. If one is seeking the akhirah, then all those praiseworthy traits. So when your desire is for the dunya, you're going to have a lot of as-sifatu mafmuma within you. When your thing is the dunya, all these ugly traits are going to be in you. But if it's for the akhirah, you're going to find that your heart is filled with as-sifatu mahmuda. You're going to have praiseworthy traits in your heart. So you'll notice there's a connection there between what one desires and what one seeks and what one is going after and what kind of traits that has in one's heart. Because one is coming from shaitan and one is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now,
we have compiled the details of this category of beneficial knowledge in the revival of the religious sciences.
So if we talk about this type of knowledge, meaning beneficial knowledge, we should think about some of it. And it's of types. One type of the knowledge which is beneficial It is praiseworthy to have a little bit of it and a lot of it. Right? And what is that? That knowledge is the knowledge that is about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-ilmu billahi ta'ala wa bi sifatihi wa af'alihi wa sunnatihi fi khalqihi. That when we talk about Allah, you need a lot of knowledge about Allah. The more you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more you know about the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more you know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's actions and the way He deals with His creations, and the wisdom how Allah puts the preference of the akhirah over the dunya, the more you know that, the more you'll travel to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because at the end of the day, the whole matter is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the more you become knowledgeable by Allah, and I told you what the Prophet ﷺ said, by Allah, I am the most knowledgeable of Allah among you, and I fear Him the most. Right? And that's why that's the first obligation, ma'arifah, to know about Allah. That's the first thing, and the most important thing. I know sometimes we learn these texts of creed like Al-Aqidah Tahawiyah, and we learn them as just like sayings, but actually we should be reflecting on what is being said. When you learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you learn about His attributes, the more you learn, it's going to increase you in your closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you have that knowledge which is praise when you have enough of it. And that's knowledge to know your obligations. So you're going to think of two things related to the branches of the religion, al-fiqh. Knowing what you're supposed to do as your personal obligations. And you should be concerned about that. Because oftentimes we have people who engage in knowledges that's not personally obligatory upon them. And they neglect that which is personally obligatory on them. So one wants to talk about the advanced subjects of al-fiqh or hadith or ilm al-kalam, and they don't know the ahkam of salah or the ahkam of tahara. They should be concerned with that, not that. Even you'll find sometimes people want to know, first I want to learn Arabic. MashaAllah, you should learn Arabic. But that doesn't come before learning your obligations. Your obligations are first. So you spend all your time trying to be Sibawayh and you don't know how to pray. It's not going to work. You need to take your priorities first. And then you add to it. And you should add to it. But you have obligations. And you got to remember, you're going to be held accountable for your obligations. That's what you're going to be questioned about. Now, go ahead. Likewise, a part of that is knowledge which relates to the heart. And knowing the states of the heart and the praiseworthy and blameworthy characteristics. So you have your knowledge in Allah, your knowledge of the rules of the sacred law, and then added to that, your states of yourself, praiseworthy or blameworthy. These are the three things that every student needs to concentrate on. Go ahead.
If you are of those worthy of it, go seek it and act by it. Then teach it and invite others to it. For whoever realizes this, acts upon it, and invites others to it, will be called great in the dominion of the heavens, according to the testimony of Jesus alayhi salam.
As we mentioned yesterday. Now, go ahead.
If you achieve this all and complete the reformation of yourself, outwardly and inwardly, and some time remains to you, then you may occupy yourself in the study of a school of jurisprudence.
Here, remember the part. He said, when you finish all of these things in this beneficial knowledge, and you finish min islahi nafsika zahiran wa batina, that you rectify yourself inwardly and outwardly, and occupy yourself with making sure your matters are well done, that you're performing the way Allah ordered you to do, before you get engaged with stuff that's not your concern. We read in the hadith, min husn al-islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'ni. Among the beauty of one's Islam is what? Leaving that which does not concern you. And what concerns you is rectifying yourself for the akhirah. That is a concern of yours. So when you finish with that, make sure you take care of yourself. You cannot worry about yourself. You ever hear when you go drive the plane, what they tell you on the plane? Before you put on someone else's mask, put on your own. You can't save no one else if you're not saved. Fix yourself, right? Fix yourself. Make sure you're right. You're not going to call no one else to Allah if you're corrupt. So we have to work on ourselves. And that's a long journey. So it should, and the longer we neglect it, the longer the journey will be. Now, go ahead.
So that in this way you may learn the less common rulings concerning worship, and how to mediate between conflicting parties when they are occupied with their lowly desires. These duties, after the completion of all the essentials mentioned, are also among the communal obligations.
So remember, communal obligations, that thing, if some do it, the rest are absolved of the responsibility. But if no one do it, everyone is sinful. And these are the details of the Islamic rules. So that means, and we mentioned this before, that yes, we must take care of our personal obligations, but there must be among us those who can deal with the detailed rules of the sacred law. So in other words, we have to have scholars. We must produce them. And it's got to come a time where we stop deferring our matters to people who don't live within our matters. If you understand what I mean by that. Meaning that in America here, we have specific circumstances that we're faced with, that we live with, that we understand. And someone who doesn't live here, even if they read 1,000,000 papers and watch 1,000,000 newscasts, they will never understand it. They don't understand what is happening on the ground. So you must produce someone who understands what is happening and can give the proper ruling related to it. Right? That means understanding the circumstances of people, understanding the history of the events, understanding what is available to apply among the rules. That takes understanding of the society. So our teachers used to say, he who judges a people without knowledge of their situation is a criminal. Whew. That's heavy. He who judges a people without knowing the reality of their circumstances is a criminal. Why? Because circumstances make a difference. And there are exceptions for rulings based on circumstances. And not just making things up. So you need to have someone who has a vast knowledge of the sacred law to apply it. And they have to be in the circumstance so that they understand well how to judge that circumstance. It's very important. Extremely important. And it is a communal obligation that these people exist. Right? And you have to think for yourself, especially as students of knowledge, that you have to develop that one day you feel the void. Because there is a void. It's not enough. It should be, in every distance of shortening the prayer, there should be someone learned to teach the rules of the Sharia and to answer the questions of the people. So let's say every 50 miles there should be a learned person that is teaching the people in that area. So that means we got a lot of work to do, right? We need to put, and when we have a real concern for da'wah, we don't just consider that the da'wah is going to stay restricted to this area, because we're going to work and we're going to spread, and so many people are going to learn, and then those people are going to need teachers. So we have to produce. That's why this work is a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong. This, for the rest of your life, this is it. And you should set your niyyah for that, right? For the rest of my life, here I am. This is my work. Not everybody can do it, but some must do it. You follow? And the one who has the ability, it becomes a personal obligation on them, because you have the ability and others may not, so you have to do it, right? And when you realize you have to do something, it becomes much easier, right? When you think, oh, anyone else can do it, you get kind of relaxed. But when you think, oh, I'm the only one that has to do that, and each of us should have in our heart that maybe this deen will be carried on my shoulders at one time, because it may very well may be that case, because you can be in the era where there's no one to teach but you. Now what? Right? There's no one else. You can't go to Shaykh Yahya or Shaykh Walid or Imam Amin. It's you. You got to do it. Right? So you got to say to yourself, I remember one of my teachers, he said to me, when he told me to go teach, I was nervous, I was afraid, I'm not qualified, I don't know anything. He said, remember, you're a teacher by necessity. You're teaching because there are no scholars available. Had the scholars been available, you wouldn't teach. And it changed my whole thought. It relaxed me because it's by necessity. It means I have to do it. Had there been someone else, I would sit down, I wouldn't teach. But since there's a necessity, you can't sit down, you have to teach. So that gives you two things. What? To learn well your matters, to learn them well, because you have to convey. And if you learn with the intention of one day conveying, that was mentioned here, then you'll do well in your studies. And don't worry about your shortcomings, because all of us, as Imam Al-Ghazali mentioned, have shortcomings. Our job is to work on those shortcomings and improve them over time. But that's not an excuse not to work. Inshallah. Now, go ahead.
However, if your lower self asks you to leave off the litanies and remembrance we have detailed earlier, due to your occupation with these duties, then know that Satan, the accursed, has injected into your heart the hidden illness, love of prestige and wealth. Beware of being deceived by this, becoming a laughing stock.
So he mentions there's levels. The nafs al-amara, al-lawama, that nafs that is inclined to evil or accusing. Your nafs telling you this is too much. Know that the nafs, when it's inclined to evil, this is from the play of the devil with you. He's deceiving you. You should move your nafs and your aspirations to have high aspirations. Remember, you are carrying the banner of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you have to have high aspiration. And all of those awrad and adhkar are going to help instill that inside of you, right? Especially, that's why I encourage you, when you do a weird, when you do a dhikr, make sure you understand it. Try to understand what it means, so that it has its impact on your heart. It's a benefit, whether you understand or not. Just the utterance of the word is a benefit. But if you get the meanings well, and you understand them well, when you recite it, it's going to have a much more profound impact on your heart. Inshallah. Now,
beware of being deceived by this, becoming a laughing stock for him, and being brought to destruction, after which he will mock you.
And remember, if you lose your path to the Akhirah, then you are in a state of destruction. Think about that. You are in a state of destruction. And consider that. No one wants to be destroyed. So think, if you fall short in this matter, that is halak for you. That is destruction. Right? And no one wants destruction. Everyone wants success and victory. So that means you must overcome your nafs. You must wage war on your nafs. To do mujahada, to struggle against it, so that it overcomes the deceptions of the devil. Yes, go ahead.
If you try the routine of litanies and worship for some time, and your lower self and yourself does not find it burdensome or become negligent of it, but rather your yearning for attaining beneficial knowledge becomes apparent, and you want it only for the sake of Allah Most High and the abode of the afterlife, then seeking this knowledge is better than other voluntary works, as long as the intention is sound.
Here, important. So when you find yourself, your nafs wants to seek the knowledge, and the purpose of that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the hereafter. You realize that you want the knowledge so that you will be pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will be successful in the hereafter. And if you do that with a good, sincere intention, then that's better than the nawafil al-ibadat. Those optional acts of worship, seeking the knowledge becomes much more valuable than that. And that is the rewardable thing. That you have a good intention, and you intend by seeking knowledge what? To give life to the sacred law and to spread it. Subhanallah. To give life to the sacred law and spread it through you. And look what he said. فَهَذَا الْعَمَلْ مَعَ هَذِهِ النِّيَّةِ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ صِيَامِ النَّهَارِ وَقِيَامِ اللَّيْلِ وَمِنَ الْقَلْوَةِ وَالرِّيَاضَةِ وَمِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ غَيْرِهِ. Subhanallah. That when you have this type of action of seeking knowledge with the niyyah sincere, it's better than fasting all day, standing all night, being in seclusion, struggling, and everything other than that. It's better to seek the knowledge with that intention. That is superior, most superior thing you could do. Now,
the matter hinges on the soundness of intention, for if it is not sound, it is the source of the deception of the ignorant and the place where men's feet slip.
And here we mention إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَلِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. All of your deeds by the intention, and everyone gets what they intended. So as it is mentioned in Zubat, correct your intention before the deed. Have your intention corrected before the deed, and have it at the beginning of the deed. And if you can make it last throughout the deed, you'll get the complete reward for that deed in the akhirah. Look at that intention. Have it before you start, have it at the beginning, maintain it throughout, and then in the hereafter you'll get the complete reward for that deed. Just keep your intention straight all the time. I intend to draw close to Allah by this deed. I want to draw close to Allah. And that should be your desire in everything you do. And if you're seeking knowledge for that, it's going to be a lot of benefit in it. Now,
Number 2, worship.
So, okay, if you can't occupy yourself with knowledge, is it over? No, you still have something to do. And this is going to speak about فضيلة الاشتغال بوظائف العبادات, the virtue and superiority of getting busy with the various acts of worship, different actions of worship that you can do. So you still should be busy. So maybe everyone, which should tell you, everyone is not going to be engaged in seeking knowledge. Everyone doesn't have that ability. So that doesn't mean they are not of any benefit. No, that is something you still can do. Because that gives us that not everyone's going to be a scholar or a student of knowledge. But does that mean that there's not things they should be aiming for the hereafter? No. There's another route that they could be successful in the hereafter. But everyone has to have a certain amount of knowledge. So we're not talking about the fard ayn. No one is excused from that. Except someone who is insane. Then that person is not able to do it. the one who is mukallaf has to learn, who is morally responsible, has to learn their personal obligation. But maybe not everyone's going to be engaged in seeking knowledge. Okay, so he gives another way that you can occupy that time to make it of value and benefit. Go ahead.
If you are unable to acquire useful knowledge, but spend your time engaged in the duties of worship, such as remembrance of Allah, recitation of the Quran, glorification, and extra prayers, this is among the stations of the worshippers and the ways of the righteous.
So you cannot acquire the beneficial knowledge in the religion, like in teaching students or benefiting from the scholar. Now occupy yourself with a dhikr, making tasbih, or qira'atul Quran, or salah. And this is getting busy with acts of worship. And those who have resolved in themselves to do worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the path of the righteous people. And if you do that, you'll be among the winners in this world and the hereafter. You know, those companions of the Prophet radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they had awrad, they had their series of devotions. Some of them, they used to do every day 12,000 tasbihah. 12,000 every day. It's related that they used to make the dhikr. Subhanallah. 12,000 times a day. Some of them, they used to do 30,000 recitations of glorification. And some of them, they had from 300 to 600 to 1,000 rak'ah a day as their optional prayer. That's what they occupy their time with. You know, among the great scholars of the Salaf was Ali ibn Hussein, Zayn al-Abidin. They used to call him as-Sajjad. Why? He used to pray 1,000 rak'ahs a day. SubhanAllah. Some of them, most of their weird was the Quran. And they used to recite the whole Quran in one day. It was related about Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he used to complete the Quran in one rak'ah. That was related about Abu Hanifa too, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. They were connected to the Quran. Some of them, they would spend the day and the night in at-tafakkur on one verse, and they would repeat it over and over again, the whole night, the whole day. Some of them making many tawaf around the Quran, around the Kaaba, and some reciting the Quran and finishing it twice in a day and a night. You know, Imam Al-Shafi'i, every day he would do a khatam of Quran. And in Ramadan he would do 2 khatams. SubhanAllah. People are attached to the Quran. One of the amazing, we tried Al-Habib Abdullah bin Hussein bin Tahir radiallahu ta'ala anhu. We used to talk about his weird because it fascinate me. He used to do La ilaha illallah 25,000 times a day. He used to do Salah ala Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam 25,000 times a day. He would Allah, Allah 25,000 times a day. He used to perform ghusl for every obligatory salah. And he would do so many khatams every 2 days, khatam of the Quran. And teaching and guiding and settling disputes. And subhanallah. So they occupied their time with. And if you want to gather all these benefits, it is to recite the Quran in salat while standing with reflection. It covers all of that. if you stand in the salah and you recite the Quran and you reflect upon its ayat, you get the meanings of all of that inside of it. And the purpose of all these awrad is what? تطهير القلب بذكر الله تعالى. Purifying your heart with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And giving your heart some comfort. You know, to be comfort with the Quran. Comfort with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every person should see what is best for their heart. And whatever has the most impact and effect on your heart, then stick to that. Find that thing, you know. And if you get bored, switch to something else. Imam Al-Haddad, said, since Allah knew the presence of boredom in the slave, He made a variety of acts of worship. So you can keep going. You don't got to be bored. Do something different. Sometimes the nature of the human is they get bored. So that's why we have a variety of acts of worship. Now, go ahead.
This is among the stations of the worshippers and the ways of the righteous. And by this method you will also be of the successful ones. Number 3.
Remember, we talk about the opposite. Opposite is to be among the losers, right? And this is how you be among the successful and winners. And you should pay attention. You know why? They said, how can one be successful except they saw someone who's successful? Right? Imam Al-Ghazali was successful. You know what he's talking about. He did it. Right? So we should emulate them. You know? Emulate even if you're not like them. Because in emulating the pious, there is success. So even if we're not like them, emulate, act. We know from ourselves we fall short all the time. But we just keep emulating. And inshallah, through that emulation, one day, the traces of that will affect our actions and we'll become better. Right? Not making claims, struggling. It's not easy. But we're going to keep struggling. Right? You are toiling to your Lord till you meet Him. Right? You're toiling to your Lord and you're going to meet Him. You got to keep struggling. To these realities become a pleasure inside of you. Right? And you should work. The beginning of the path, sa'abun, very difficult, hard. And when you reach the end, it's sa'abun, it's easy. But how do you do that? Through mujahadah. You got to keep working. Keep working. You got to test yourself. Make it like over and over till it becomes second nature. Right? Now, go ahead.
Number 3, good works. The third possible way.
So, okay, we cannot do all this ibadah. It's kind of difficult. Right? Let me go help somebody. Right? Let me go give some benefit to people. That's another option. Everybody's not keen to worship. You're not forgotten. Still something you can do. Go be of some benefit. Right? Go bring benefit to the Muslims. Right? Make yourself of benefit. Now, go ahead.
The third possible way is to spend your time in working on something that will bring benefit to Muslims, and by which you will bring happiness to the hearts of believers, or by which you will make it easier for the righteous to accomplish good works. For example,
here, so you look at this. The Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, none of you believe until you love for your fellow Muslim what you love of yourself among good things. Right? So try to bring khair to people. And you should always be looking for means of how to make the Muslims happy. Because the one who makes the heart of the believer happy, Allah will be happy with that person. So, how can you do that? You start doing good deeds that others benefit from. And among them, go ahead.
Serving the jurists, the true Sufis, or the men of religion, taking care of their errands, and striving to bring food to the poor and needy, making a habit of visiting the sick, and escorting funerals. All these are superior to voluntary acts because they are forms of worship and they involve kindness to Muslims.
Here, you think about that. Being in a state of service for your teachers, helping them with the stuff they have to do, helping their needs. So here, amazing that you have Al-Maqasid. There's so much benefit you can get here when you got the right intention. I cleaned the rug so that people would come and pray and do dhikr and recite Quran and learn. I cleaned the bathroom so it's clean, everything. There's a lot of khair. I'll facilitate for the teachers to make sure they can spread that knowledge and I get a share of that. What about feeding the poor? This would be something that the student of knowledge should go out and do. Go in the neighborhood and help in the soup kitchen. Feed the homeless. Help bring things to the poor. And Muslims should get involved with this service. As general, you know how many people in poor areas and in poor countries turn to other religions because they are serving them food? They come with food and invalid beliefs, and because the people are being served, they embrace. They don't think about it. It's that they have a need, and the one who feels your need, the heart is naturally inclined to that person. So that we should be in the service of people. And that is a duty that doesn't take a lot of knowledge. It just takes some effort, right? Visiting the sick, that's going to make people happy. Following the funeral prayers. All of these things, they're acts of worship because it brings benefit to the believers. Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani rahimahullah, he said, I did not arrive to Allah by standing the night and fasting the day. He said, rather I arrived to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by generosity, humbleness, and a clear heart for everyone. Subhanallah. It's not, look how he said, I didn't arrive to Allah by a lot of prayers and a lot of fasting. How? وصلت إلى الله تعالى بالكرم والتواضع والسلامة الصدور. سلامة الصدر. How I arrived to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? By being generous. Generosity. Taking care of others. Serving others. And doing that with humbleness. Because it's a connection. Actually, when you help someone, they are benefiting you more than you are benefiting them. When you help someone, they are benefiting you more than you're benefiting them. One of the righteous, someone came and cursed him and spoke badly to him. And he said, I'm speaking bad to you and you're not replying. He said, how am I going to reply to someone who is benefiting me? I said, I'm cursing you. He said, I know, and you're giving me your good deeds. How am I going to respond in a negative way? You're benefiting me. Right? You're benefiting me. And here, so you need to be humble when you serve. Don't think you're above, think you're below. Right? Because really you're getting the reward, and that person is a gift from Allah to you. And salamatu sadr, that your heart is clear. Shaykh Samuel said something to me one night, and I thought about it. He said, try never to go to sleep except that your heart is free of any feeling towards anyone. Nothing in your heart for anyone. Even your enemies, because you want guidance for them, right? So you're not going to hold something in your heart like, oh Allah guide them, oh Allah forgive them, oh Allah. That's right. And that power of that dua can change people. Then the Prophet ﷺ used to pray for his enemies.